I thought my boss hated me. So what happened was we were in the middle of this project where we were planning like a YouTube video, and I was telling like presenting to my boss like what we were doing, my like considerations of like who the audience we should target and how that would work like logistically. And I spent like, a decent chunk of time explaining my rationale and why like I believed we should do it this way. And then at the end, he just said, I disagree. And in that moment, I was like, shit, what have I done? I spent like all day preparing for this, preparing for the rationale, like coming up with the video idea, the angle, and he just like disagreed with it. And in that moment, I felt almost like a just a bit lost, like kind of like dumbfounded, like just frozen in like a second. But I had to like snap myself quickly out of it just to hear what he was saying. But basically, it turned out just to be about like one specific nuance in the video planning like process that he was like unhappy about, and he basically said we should do it this way because of this, this, this. And when I listened to it, and it was like, oh yeah, makes sense, makes sense. But the reason I wanted to share this is because what my coworker told me after really like changed my perspective on it. And what he basically said is the fact that my boss was so like upfront and so like just blunt with his like just his words is almost like a sign of like trust, because he knows he doesn't have to like sugarcoat things. He can just directly say what he wants to say without, without all the fluff you typically give people. When you give people feedback, you're like, oh yeah, you did this part well, but this part you could improve on. Like, in this case, it was just very like straight, direct, what the feedback was. And when I thought about it this way, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, first of all, he's not like a dick or anything. But another thing, like, is if you're having like these meetings all day and you're having a lot of these meetings, then it's important to be like efficient. So I understand like where he's coming from. And so overall, this experience taught me that like what happens to us, we can sometimes see it in a very like subjective way. And oftentimes our subjective way of seeing things is very negative. So I interpreted that situation as a negative thing, whereas my coworker interpreted as a positive thing. And just by seeing it as a positive thing, it made me look at the situation in a completely different light. Like as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, well, I guess I don't feel that bad about it anymore. Like I just felt like, cool. I'm glad that happened. Whereas if he didn't say that, I probably would have just dwelled on that moment for ages. So the takeaway from this is that oftentimes our subjective interpretation of things plagues us more than the actual reality. And so that's the takeaway I had with this. And so, yeah, I'm keen to, hear your thoughts on this, what you think, and if you've had similar situation like this before. But yeah, that's the main lesson that I learned from this.